Hello to everyone, and of course, magandang gabi po for Marinel. It's very late in the evening, I think, in the Philippines right now. The lecture series Climate Controversies is organized by the Department of Southeast Asian Studies at the University of Bonn in cooperation with Fridays for Future, the Stiftung Asienhaus, and the Philippine Bureau. Every week, experts and activists from and on Southeast Asia will analyze the effects of climate change and on the region and discuss the challenges and strategies of climate justice and the climate justice movement. Today, we will record the lecture. I think Ollie said it already, and we will stream it on Facebook and on YouTube. My name is Miriam Overhoff. I'm the head of the NGO Philippine Bureau. We are a small NGO in Cologne, and the Philippine Bureau is an independent socio-economic and political information center based in Cologne, Germany. Our mission is to inform and raise awareness on the German public on current socio-political and development issues concerning the Philippines. We are staying in close partnerships with different non-governmental organizations, networks, and aid agencies in the Philippines and elsewhere working on Filipino topics. But we are working also very close with, for example, overseas Filipino workers or the Filipino diaspora here in Germany as well. And we always welcome volunteers to our small organization. Yes, but mainly we are working on the topics human rights, climate justice, labor migration, and land rights in the Philippines. But for example, migration, we are working also on countries where Filipino migrants are living. And of course, we are regularly publishing reports and inside views. Climate justice and the effects of plastic pollution in the Philippines are some of our main topics as well for the situation right now. At least since 2013, when Super Typhoon Yolanda or International Haiyan destroyed the Philippines, we are focusing more on the climate justice topic. The rising of the disaster capitalism in reconstruction has a serious consequence for the Filipino population until now. The threat to human rights and climate activists is constantly rising. Yeah, but I think Marinel Ubaldo from the Philippines will tell us something more about this later. And now, yeah, enjoy watching the lecture, and I will turn over to Maximilian. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Miriam. I'm going ahead now, and first of all, I'm going to introduce our today's speaker, Marinel Ubaldo. Thanks for coming, first of all. And yeah, when she was 16 years old in 2013, she lived at her hometown, 1,000 kilometers southeast from Manila. By that time, the Super Typhoon Haiyan hit the Philippines. I guess the most of you heard that or heard about this typhoon. The typhoon destroyed the whole region. There were dead bodies everywhere, and people lost their homes for months. So everything was destroyed, and it was a horrible situation for the whole Philippines. Yeah, Marinel were forced to grow up and decided to make a change because, yeah, she realized that climate change wasn't an abstract future threat, and it was kind of like real. So yeah, after that, she became a global future activist and starts Fridays for Future on the Philippines. So you could say she's like a Greta Thunberg of the Philippines. And furthermore, I'm going to share my screen, right? Furthermore, she's an ecological justice campaign coordinator of Living Laudato Si Philippines and one of the founders of Youth Leaders Environmental Action Federation. She has spoken of at the opening of the UNFCCC COP21 in Paris and at the Climate Justice Liability Public Hearing in New York, USA in 2018. She has recently been trained by former US Vice President Al Gore as a climate reality leader, and she continues to tell the story in the global platform aiming to shed light on the reality of climate change and the urgency for world leaders to keep their climate commitments and for the rest of the world to act on it. So yeah, thanks for coming. I hope you're going to enjoy our today's presentation at our climate controversy series. And yeah, now I'm going to head over to Marinel. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's evening here in the Philippines. It's 11 in the evening. So I'm really excited for this talk, and I really hope to share something very insightful to you guys. Allow me to share my screen. So as what have been already said, okay. I am Marinel Ubaldo. I am a social worker and an international climate justice advocate in the Philippines. And I am from a coastal community in a far remote community. It is a coastal, like in front of the Pacific Ocean. I am a daughter of a fisherman who has lived his whole life providing for his family. Life has never been easy for my father. He wasn't able to finish grade school because he needed to work in order to provide for his whole family. He wasn't able to go to school because of that, and he was already fishing at the age of 10 years old. This is my place, Matarino, here, and this is the Pacific Ocean. So I am living here. I grew up in a very beautiful coastal community where everyone is sharing their food, where everyone is just kind to each other, where every child could just run to the sea and enjoy the seashells and just enjoy the beach. And here comes 2013. So now I will be sharing with you the typhoons and the climate injustice in the Philippines. So Philippines is an archipelago, as you may already know. It is composed of 7,641 islands, and it is situated in the Western Pacific Ocean. It is positioned on the Pacific Ring of Fire, and it is close to the equator. That is why we are prone to typhoons. And let me share to you how beautiful our country is. So this is the Philippines. We are we're very rich with nature. We have very beautiful islands and white beach. And this is what tourists have been going back to the Philippines too. And we have beautiful sceneries. And well, an average of 20 typhoons visit the Philippines in a year. So you just have to imagine, like, in a year you have to rebuild. In a year you have to experience 20 or more typhoons. And in a year, your house could be destroyed not just once, not just twice, thrice, or maybe in the fifth time. Or maybe it won't be rehabilitated anymore because it is so destroyed that you cannot fix it anymore. So the Philippines is prone to tropical cyclones due to its geographical location, which generally produce heavy rains and flooding of large areas, and also strong winds, which result to heavy casualties to human life and destructions to crops and properties. Thus, it is of utmost importance to have sufficient knowledge on such maritime phenomena for beneficial purposes. So here is the climate impact to the Philippines. Who would have maybe no one from Tacloban. I am now situated in Tacloban. I am here in Tacloban right now. And this is my city 7 years ago, when Super Typhoon Haiyan struck and we were left by nothing but devastation. This is Tacloban, and you cannot imagine how people struggled to find their way home, because just going back to their place and seeing their house wasn't there anymore. That is how I felt when I ran from our evacuation house to our evacuation center to our house, just to find our house empty. There were just three pillars that were left in our house, and all our belongings wasn't there anymore. And this is us. We were isolated for how many days? There were no help that came. We were just eating what was available in our surrounding, what was available in the ocean. So whatever food is floating there, we were just eating it because we didn't have a choice. And this is the devastation after the Super Typhoon Haiyan. Maybe some of you here have already saw these pictures because this has been being posted a lot of times, especially during Yolanda commemoration. And this is one, if you can see there are actually 6 ships who went to the houses, just ravaged all the houses there. And this is one here. There were so many people who died in this area, and I know someone which I know someone, her 6 family members died during the typhoon. And this is a baby and a mother who struggled to survive on their own. Their family wasn't able to survive. This is Tacloban. And thousands of people have died. And when the authorities reached to 6,000 counting of deaths, they just stopped counting, and we don't believe that there were just 6,000 people who died, because there were a total of 30,000 more people who have died if they have just counted all. And even up until today, there are still a lot of bodies that are still missing. My uncle is still missing. My friend's father and her nephew is still missing. And up until today, we cannot find their bodies. This is This is the part of Tacloban where the ship came. And this is it now. Let me just, some of my org mates have made this video, and I hope to share this with you so that you would see how devastated it was during this Typhoon Haiyan. Okay, so that video was just so emotional because it says like we were just keep on we just keep on counting dead bodies, and we sometimes fail to understand that these numbers that we are counting, these are people. They are wives, they are husbands, they are children of people, they have been breadwinners, they have been providing for their family. We just keep counting and counting casualties like they're just numbers. We fail to realize that these people who have lost their lives are actually they have dreams. They have dreams for their family, they have dreams for themselves, but because they needed to die, they needed to risk themselves for their maybe other family members. They just cannot reach their dreams anymore. And maybe this kind of story is just one of many. This is just one of thousands of stories, and there are still more stories out there. And the Philippines is not just the only country that is suffering from the climate disasters. There are still a lot more, and there is still stories, thousands, millions of stories around the world. It would really tell you how climate change is real. Now, 7 years after, Tacloban is this. After you see how we have been smashed by waves, ships, how the trees have fallen, we keep on rising. We always wake up in a day like we have to wake up, and we really have to reach that dreams because we don't have a choice but to really rise up. And this is Tacloban today, trying to survive in our day-to-day basis. There are still bodies who are still missing, but we have to go on. And this is one of the ships. They just put it there as a memorial. There were 6 of them there, and then one of this they didn't just remove. At first, they can't remove it from the road. And then when they tried, they just pushed it a little. Then they just put it there. And then they just decided to just put it as a memorial. And I want to emphasize that it is not resiliency that made us to rise again. No, we didn't have a choice. We rose again. We wake up every day, not because we're resilient. We try to cope every climate disaster that we face in our day-to-day life, not because we're resilient, but because we don't have a choice but to wake up in a day because we still have a family who love us. We still have dreams that we want to achieve in our life. And it's just so unfair that the Philippines, who is just contributing a little to the whole carbon emission, is suffering much from a devastation that we even haven't caused. Right? And then the sun will shine again on us. Just didn't, but yeah. And then 2 weeks ago, we thought that it would be a good Christmas because last year when I was in Europe doing my talk, there was a typhoon who ravaged my home. And my family, they weren't able to celebrate Christmas because our house was washed out on the 24th. And then now, 2 weeks ago, we were ravaged by 3 strong typhoons. It seems to me that they were like trying to, I don't know if they were playing, but there are just 3 of them in a row. And this is not normal. We didn't have like this before. And that is the result. A lot of properties have been damaged again. Floods, people who lost their livelihood, their houses, people who were struggling to cope in the middle of a pandemic. People who don't have a home anymore. And if you say like you have to stay home, they just don't have a home. And they are staying in an evacuation center where there are thousands and hundreds of them. And the Philippines is just trying to cope at the moment because we don't have a choice, but they really survived because we don't have a choice. This is just this week. Up until today, it's still happening. This is because of the heavy rain and the floods, and it killed people, killed livelihood. This is the aerial view of the place. In 2015, 2 years after Super Typhoon Haiyan, Filipino people came to realize that we should not just stay as victims. We should do something, that we should really step up. And then we submitted a petition to the Commission on Human Rights in the Philippines to investigate 47 carbon majors in the whole world. There are actually 90 plus of them. However, 47 of them exist. They have branch here in the Philippines. So we have this petition, the climate justice petition, and this is Filipino people versus the big polluters. So Filipinos are the front line of climate emergency. The impacts we're experiencing, like intense typhoons and drought, are expected to get worse. And it is being worse. It is worse now. While the corporations most responsible for climate change are doing business as usual, we need to hold them accountable for fueling climate change and hiding the truth from us for decades. We won't let them profit at the expense of our survival and the future. Because like me, as someone who have survived a super typhoon, I felt that these people are just profiting from the loss of other people, from the suffering of other people, and we should not let that happen. We should stop that. So fossil fuel companies like Shell, ExxonMobil knew decades ago that the burning of fossil fuels could lead to catastrophic climate impacts, which would harm people and the planet. But some chose to hide this and undermine the science and the facts. Now the whole world is facing a climate emergency. But a growing number of people around the world are taking legal action, and others are supporting them by joining the global climate justice movement. So now, a lot of grassroots communities, farmers, fishermen, a lot of us individuals have come together. We have united to make these corporations accountable and legally liable for their actions. The Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines is investigating into the responsibility. Actually, last December 2019, there is already a result of this. And indeed, they can be legally liable, they can be legally accountable for the human rights violations linked to climate impacts. And it has been already announced during the COP25 in Madrid. And this petition could not just benefit the Filipino people. Everyone around the world could benefit from this petition, because this is the first petition. This is a historic petition, a landmark petition in the world. A lot of countries and organizations could use this legal document to sue these corporations for their human rights violations linked to climate impacts. So we are not just doing this for ourselves. We are also doing this to other vulnerable countries around the world. And now we're just waiting for the resolution from the Commission on Human Rights and what could be the next step. The climate change and human rights investigation. So the first ever human rights investigation into corporate responsibility for climate change has served as a platform for communities on the front lines of climate impacts to share their stories, and for the world's leading experts to share the basis for holding the big polluters accountable. Let me just share with you our climate justice story. So I hope I have inspired you and led you to think what could be the other options and what could be the other actions. We would really appreciate if you would sign the petition, though we have already, there is already uh, a result of the petition, but we want to gather more signatures so that the Commission on Human Rights could be really pushed to release the resolution. Be with us in demanding for climate justice, and always think that whatever you do for the environment, you're not just doing that for yourself. You're doing that for a lot of people in the other parts of the world, and a lot of people in the other parts of the world are benefiting from what you're doing. I hope you always choose what is best, not just for yourself, but for the others, because we are all connected and we will all be sharing the same problem if we will not act now, if we will not hold those people, those corporations accountable. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I'm going to start the discussion round now. So if someone wants to ask a question, ask Marinel a question, ask a general question about the topic or about typhoon storms on the Philippines and so on, you can just raise your hand or type it in the chat. Furthermore, you can just turn on your camera and ask the question directly. But anyway, I would like to begin with a question, because I was wondering through the whole presentation, how long does it took to rebuild your village? Because it looks like it was totally destroyed. So yeah, how long does it took?
Like whenever we have a typhoon, we always want to rehabilitate just after the typhoon because we don't have anywhere to go. However, it's not just possible because like a week after or maybe days after, there would be another typhoon who would just come and like destroy everything. I showed you the picture of the downtown. It is the city part of Tacloban. But if you go outside Tacloban, you would see unfinished housing relocations. You would see people who are still striving. You would see people who are still living in the same house that they were during Super Typhoon Haiyan, because not everyone was relocated. I myself, my family in Eastern Samar is not relocated. We are still living on the mangrove forest, which is a shore, which is not safe for storm surges. But we don't have a choice because we don't have anywhere else to go. So I cannot really say that we have recovered. I cannot really say that we have been rehabilitated because we're still on the process of going right now to that phase. But because there is still a lot of challenges that is coming along the way, that is why it's just maybe the problems are just piling up, and it's just so we still struggle to say if we are already okay, if we are already recovered. So I mean, for me as someone living on the shore, rehabilitation, rebuilding our house is not anymore an option. It is the relocation. But we don't have that kind of option because there is no option like that given to us by our government, or we can just relocate ourselves.
Okay, thank you. I forgot something, because first of all, I would like to ask the students to give us their question about the presentation.
Hi.
Oh,
Oh my God. Okay, sorry. Can everybody hear me correctly? Yes, okay. Thank you very much for this very, very interesting presentation, Marinel. I have one concrete question towards climate justice. So you talked about a lot about demanding climate justice. But I was wondering how climate justice, in your opinion, in the Philippines would look like. Is it only like monetary compensation from the big companies, or does it include a concrete action plan? Are there any demands you're asking from your local government? So how does climate justice basically, in your opinion, look in the Philippines? Again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that question. It is really a good question. For me, when the result of our petition have been announced during the COP25, it was really emotional. I was really emotional. I was like crying a lot because for me that was first step towards getting the justice that we deserve. For me, having climate justice is seeing that those big corporations not just pay, but really change their business practices. And they should have pay the right tax. They should pay those people who have lost their loved ones, who have lost their livelihoods, and they should really pay governments like countries to really have a more sustainable or more typhoon-proof evacuation center that would cater a lot more people, that would like support infrastructure that is not just substandard or that can like cope up in big typhoons or big storms, and also to relocate people from the shore, because that is where their vulnerability lies. When I was a child, I felt that our place is a paradise. Is like it is. I am living in a paradise. But when Super Typhoon Haiyan came and just devastated everything, it changed how I look, because I felt that our geographic location is the source or the reason why we are vulnerable, why we are suffering that much, and that climate justice for me would mean that these big corporations will change their business practices, will always consider how they will affect people in the other side of the world, and they will pay for those victims of the climate crisis or the climate related disasters.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your talk, for your lecture. I have the next question. Previously in our seminar, we read a text that deals with preparing for climate events such as typhoons, and we learned that often the damage caused by a typhoon can be greatly reduced by proper preparation, like improving risk assessment, the building of adaptive capacity, and adaptation strategies. So were there further measures taken against typhoons since 2010, and were those measures effective?
There are measures that our government is doing so that we could mitigate, we could lessen those effects. However, they're not enough, because at some point I could understand why. Because if they are responding to another typhoon, there comes another typhoon that needs another response. And what is just the thing that I am kind of not, that I am really like, I want to have in our preemptive strategies is to have a more proactive actions, because it seems like disasters have become normal, and that our response have become reactive. So we just react if there is already a disaster. Because we have to, as much as possible, we have to hold those funds whenever there would be worse that would happen. And in a third world country like the Philippines, I could understand why. because we don't know how much, or we don't know the whole devastation would be. So a lot of, like, some of the government funds have already been reallocated to another disaster, and then here comes again another disaster, and there is no fund already. So we're just trying to cope up. We're just trying to cope with the losses, and then here comes another that would devastate us again. So there are strategies, but we're still in the same vulnerability as we were before. And that's sad.
Thank you very much.
My name is Ling Rong and I come from Taiwan. So I also have like a lot, like my country also have a lot of experience with typhoon, and I totally feel you with like the disaster and all this thing. Even I personally haven't experienced that. And also I kind of like know also how costly it is with all this measure against typhoon, and all this adaptation is really not kind of like as easy as maybe in academic studies. And my question is mainly about like, so yeah, like I found the legal actions you're presenting is really, really interesting. So I wonder, are you also like taking other actions for the climate justice in Philippines? So yeah, like other action outside legal actions, and also the others. I wonder during to undergo the whole legal process, what kind of like difficulties or what experience have you made? And yeah, like was that easy, or there are like some really, really difficult part, and like yeah, like how is the stakeholders now also? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. So, yeah, a lot, actually we are doing a lot of things outside that climate justice petition that we have made. Like here in the Philippines, last 2008, and we had this brand audit, and we don't really believe that coastal cleanup or community cleanup helps, because they're just band-aid solutions for us. So what we did with the things that we have collected during the community and coastal cleanup, we segregated them, we audited them depending on the brands, and then we made a data on who are those most polluters in Tacloban. And then we aimed that all those trashes that we have collected from those 5 big polluters in Tacloban, we would just bring it back to them, so they have to be responsible with their trash. And then we have submitted an ordinance along with that to our city councilor to ban the single-use plastics in Tacloban, because we saw that there are still wrappers who were like produced maybe even before me. My parents were not even married at that time, maybe. And they're still there. They're just 1980s wrappers. And we have collected them during our community and coastal cleanup. And we want the city of Tacloban to declare climate emergency. So our climate strikes are actually kind of different to other climate strikes, because we always want to make like a concrete or like a clear call of action to our government, because we felt like here in the Philippines, rallying and protesting is like a stigma. It's stigmatized. A lot of people are saying like that is a rebellious act, and that is not okay, and that is not good. So what we did is we always send petition, like we want our leaders to know what we want from them, so that they would know how to respond to our action. So one of that is in 2019 in May, during my graduation, we submitted a petition again to the city council for them to declare climate emergency. We want them to know that the youth are watching them. We want them to know that the youth want to be involved in decision-making processes, especially if it involves us, if it involves our future. That is why actually last week we were called from our we were called from the council, from the legislation office here in Tacloban, because they wanted to have a consultation with the petition that we have submitted to them. So we could see now that they're actually doing something on the things that we have submitted to them, because we always send them like follow-up letters, like we know that you are not doing something to this request, kindly do something, and all like that. And we want, like here in the Philippines, we always want to have like partnership with the government, because like we as we want it or not, the government has the authority, they have the resources to make change, to make things happen, and we want them to partner with them in making those changes. Yeah, and that is not like even Super Typhoon Haiyan. I have been already going to remote communities to talk about the basics of climate change, how to mitigate it, what we could do as a community to help adapt and mitigate its effects. And we did radio broadcasting, we do theater recitals, and all sorts of dissemination about the climate change. Because if you go to rural communities, if you go to remote communities, you would be surprised that a lot of people actually don't know what is climate change, or they don't even maybe know what's causing the sea level rise. Though they have this intimate relationship with the environment, they don't know what's causing the change in the environment. And that is a very, for me, alarming, because we can't solve something that we don't know we can solve a problem that we don't know. I mean, there should be like an acceptance from us that it is a problem so that we can solve them. And for me, education is the key. We have to educate people. Sorry, did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Marinel, thanks a lot for your presentation. It was very moving and powerful, I thought. So it's great to have you here. Maybe could you just explain just quickly how the typhoons are connected to climate change? Why is that connected?
Yeah, during our film in 2015, it has been explained by some scientists that Typhoon Haiyan is not yet an effect of climate change, because if we say that it is an effect of climate change, it has to be observed in a minimum of 30 years. However, Super Typhoon Haiyan has been exacerbated by climate change because of the ocean warming. When the ocean warms, it strengthens the intensity of the typhoon. So typhoons are actually being developed in the ocean. Being us situated in the Western Pacific Ocean, we are prone to so many typhoons. We can be passed by so many typhoons. And these typhoons are actually developed in the ocean. So when the ocean is warm, it develops, it strengthens the typhoon. And that is what happened. That was what happened to Super Typhoon Haiyan. Because while Super Typhoon Haiyan was developing, the ocean was warm. And before it made landfall to the land, it was already a super typhoon. And that was the first super typhoon that we had. And after that, we had a lot more of super typhoons. And that is not just a coincidence. I mean, I don't want to accept that it could be our way of life in the next 10 to 10 years, or maybe now it's already starting. But if we will not do something, then maybe we will have maybe a category 6 typhoons. Because before, the strongest was category 3, and we have now category 5. And maybe it could be strengthened more if we will not do something now. Great. Did I answer your question, Oliver?
Yeah, I thought it's good that people make the connection again.
Marinel, hi. My name is Jutta, and first let me express my deep sorry for your loss and for your situation. What I would like to ask, maybe it's a bit another topic, but you mentioned during your lecture that that is happening and you have a pandemic. Do you think that pandemic makes it even worse? I mean, for the people, on one side they have the typhoon, yeah, and they have to survive. They struggle very hard. That became clear. And on the other side, yeah, you would have to keep social distancing, which is impossible. Yeah, and you have these refugee camps. So I guess also this will have a deep impact. So how's the current situation with the pandemic for the moment, and the typhoon, of course?
As of the moment, people are just really trying to survive.
Yeah.
And trying to follow safety protocols. But the reality is there is no social distancing and evacuation centers. Mm-hmm. When they are just sleeping in a covered court in a gym, in a gymnasium. Mm-hmm. When they're just sleeping in a bag or just a cartoon or whatever. And everyone is just trying to survive. And everyone here, like my friends and all of us, are just trying to help, giving donations, food, water, clothes. We have been sending a lot. Even what I will have from this conversation, from this lecture, I will also send it all to the donation drives. Yeah. Because people just need help. Like a lot of people have already been suffering since the pandemic started. A lot of people have lost their jobs and they have been struggling to find food. How much more that they don't have any more a house now? How much more if they don't have any possessions now? How much more if they don't have anything now? They don't have a book. Their children might not go to school anymore because everything is online, everything is on module, everything you have to pay for data to have a virtual class and those kind of things. And a lot of people can't afford that kind of education. And even with the pandemic, there are a lot of children who already said that they can, but they would not be enrolling, and they have not enrolled. How much more now that there was typhoons?
I guess that the government will try to help whatever it can. I mean, as what I understood from your lecture is that the civil society. It's a very big demand to the civil society to do more. I mean, of course, you have relocation and all this, and the government can do what it can do. But what does the civil society can do on its own? I mean, when you hear, I don't know, have you information that you know, another typhoon is approaching, and that you know, we have to close our homes, we have to relocate, we have to leave or whatever. Is there any what the civil society does? Because, I mean, I don't know if any typhoon is going to surprise you, you know?
Civil societies are actually like leading the response now here in the Philippines. Just so surprising how they have been trying to fill in the gap of the government. And they have been there every typhoon. Sorry, can you hear me right?
It's difficult, yeah.
Yeah, so they have been really doing a lot. Like now, what I'm seeing is a lot of individuals, private individuals, civil societies have been gathering to have these donations go to those who need it. Like sometimes there is great division now in the Philippines on the liberals and the Democrats. Like, I mean, from people, because our president now, as you may know, is not really doing its part, but maybe he's doing it, but people don't see it. A lot of people have been trying to see where he was during those crazy times.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would like to encourage the others to say something as well. But let me please ask you a last question, because now that you mentioned the government, I don't know if you have ever heard about this Dutch case. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly. It is Yolanda. This is a Dutch NGO who sued its own government.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess that will be
and
no
they
option.
won.
Yeah, they won. I know. I guess that will be no option for you because you explained that you would like to work together with the government. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have this campaign to make like the government accountable, but we need them to be accountable, because people, they should have been there leading for the response to the people who need it the most. But it seems to us like the government is not doing enough, and that is why the private people and the civil societies have to organize themselves just to help people, because the government is not doing enough.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for all your responses. I wish you good luck with your what is it? Your petition, and I will sign it, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions?
Yes, I have one. Sorry, Maxi.
Yeah.
Marinel, thank you at first. Can you say us how and where I or we can make donations to be sure that it's arrived the right persons and not something somewhere? Can you write it in the chat, or do you have any ideas to find something like that?
Yeah, my friends and I are actually doing some donation drives, and just the other day we already sent a lot of clothes and food to Cagayan de Oro. I mean Cagayan, not de Oro. To Cagayan, those people who were victims. And I will maybe try to coordinate with Oliver on that if you want to donate.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. And of course, I sign your petition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there anyone else who want to ask something? You can, yeah, Oliver?
Yeah, just to get back to the liability strategy, which I find very powerful, to be honest, because if you think about it, if the big polluters are liable, which I mean, in fact they are, then they should pay for the damage, but also the loss of people's loved ones. So it would very quickly become very expensive for them, and we're talking about billions and billions of dollars, right? And this money is needed by the communities affected by climate change. So I think it's a very, very good demand. But how can we, is it a demand that's being taken up also, for example, by Fridays for Future in Europe? Because of course, here these big polluters usually have their headquarters in the global north. So I think this should be one of the key demands of the climate justice movement, also in the global north. So what do people from Fridays for Future say about this? And is this something that we should be discussing more?
I'm not sure, is this a question to Fridays for Future, or should Marinel answer it?
Yeah, I think you can answer it as well if you get an answer. So yeah.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure if we actually have this as a demand in our demands to our government in the moment. But Fridays for Future is working together with like on global scale, because we have a lot of Fridays for Future movements around the globe. and exchanging. And of course, I think we will be happy to promote this. But this was also what I would like to ask Marinel, because I remember when we first met, we talked about the climate conferences, and you said that often you were invited to speak, but you had like the feeling that they only felt like they wanted to hear a sad story, but they were not like eager to change anything. And that sentence really stuck in my head. And so my question for you would be, because that's something we discuss also with Fridays for Future a lot, or Students for Future a lot, like how can we be better allies, and how can we be really like a climate justice movement. So what do you think should Fridays for Future groups, climate justice movements in the global north should do more to make voices like yours heard and really demand the change? I think you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I was sorry. Sorry. I think, as I was saying, I think you in the global north you can do so much, because you have a choice, and you have, you know, you have the, I mean, sorry for the term, but like you have the privileges, and then you can make, you can really have a great change. And it would be really awesome for it. I just feel really grateful, and I really appreciated that Oliver brought about supporting that petition, because it would really mean a lot to us if you would do it. Also, if you will demand accountability from this, or from these big corporations, especially because their big branches are in the global north, would really mean, I mean, it's really a nice way of supporting people like us. And yes, I have said that, and I still feel the same. Like I am invited to a lot of big conferences just because people, you know, world leaders just want to have a sad story. And then I don't know if they even take it seriously, or if they do something about it. That is why maybe I have also told you, Lara, in Germany, at that time, I was really determined that I would really educate myself. I would really find a scholarship that would support me, so that I could be an expert in this. I will not just be a victim telling a sad story to people, that I am just, you know, and I want to be in the area where the decision is being made. That is why I really want to find a scholarship and educate myself on this topic. And I want really to have a master's degree. And then I feel like if I already do that, I would have more credibility to talk not just my experience, of course, my story and the story of many people who have suffered the brunt of climate change is very important. It humanizes science. It humanizes how climate change would affect us in the future. It is very important for future action. But also, we want to make sure that these people who are listening to our stories would do something. And I want to make sure of that. That is why that is one of my goals, to really study more and to have masters. And I don't want to have masters here in the Philippines, but because they don't offer that kind of, sorry, I just said that. But like yeah. And yeah, sorry.
Unfortunately, our master is in German. But once you've got your master's, if you want to do your PhD with us, yeah, just let us know.
Maybe.
Yeah, thank you. If there ain't any more questions, are there? No, seems like there ain't any more questions. So yeah, I would like to thank you again, Marinel, for your great presentation. And yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for joining us, our climate controversy talk. I don't know, Miriam, you turned on your camera. Do you want to say something at the end? No? Okay. Yeah, so thanks for coming. Thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and yeah, do you want to say something at the end, Marinel?
Thank you so much for listening to my story and the story of my community. And I hope that we will see each other soon in our climate actions. And I really hope that you will not be tired of doing something, of doing more for our environment. Just always think that whenever you do something good for the environment, you're doing it for us. You're doing it for people who are already bearing the brunt of climate change. And we here in the Philippines too are doing our best to cope and to survive and to make our government and those corporations accountable. And may we always not be tired and not doubt ourselves. We will really make a difference.